Hello, I'm Scott Soshnick.
And I'm Eben Novi-Williams, and this is the Barbarians at the Gators sports business podcast, the Sporticast.
No, it doesn't work. What do you mean, Barbarians at the Gators?
we're
You're playing
talking
Gate
private
and
equity in
Gators.
college sports. Yeah.
I know, but Drew Weatherford played football at Florida State. That's a Seminole. I know it doesn't play off Gate, but you
Seminoles
can't
doesn't
do
start with
that.
Gate.
I know, but do you want a mulligan? I see
No, I
it.
don't. I actually thought you were going to like that one. I'm surprised. I actually thought this was a
Now,
I thought that was a winner.
now that I bring you my concerns, are you still surprised? You're like, I should have thought of that.
No, not at all.
All right. You know the difference between this is true. You know, years ago the Gators had a crocodile on their cover of their media guide.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Whoops. Somebody pointed it out.
I
Whoops.
love you. If you're asking me what the difference is outside of geographic location, I do not know the difference.
And I also
Size, probably.
I'm going to here's my Florida. You want my Florida Gator story? Little added value.
Please.
I wish I could remember the player now. Who was the really good defensive end at Florida? But whatever. So one of our reporters went to one of those media days or whatever down there, and the defensive end at Florida. It was a big name. I can't remember him now. But he literally said, like, our game plan against Tennessee is to hurt Peyton Manning. That's what he said. Like, the game plan is to hurt him. So I remember we wrote a story that said the lead was the T on the helmet stands for target. Good lead. Then get into Ed Chester. Does that ring a bell to you? Okay. So somebody, all right, so Ed Chester was the player. So somebody in the Florida media, I guess, saw our story and asked Spurrier about it. Said, never said it. Never said it. Never said it. Not true. Not true. So we called our former employer. We called down there and we called the SID and said, well, we have this on tape. Like, the conversation was recorded. We are happy unless Steve comes out and does not disparage and says, yes, this was accurate reporting. And they were like, well, play it for us. No, we're just letting you know we have the conversation. It was recorded, and we're going to call a news conference or a teleconference with all the reporters leading up to the Tennessee-Florida game. That's a big game. Well, we're just going to call a teleconference with all of them and play the tape for them. Even then, Spurrier couldn't just say, yeah, it was like this couch. Well, he said something like, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, Steve, he flat out said what we quoted him saying. The game plan is to hurt Peyton Manning. Anyway, that is my thing.
Right there. That's the head ball.
That's the old ball coach. Yeah, the old ball coach with the visor. Everybody loves the visor. Anyway, I would have said, all right, so this is the private equity, whatever, or something, because we're here. Like this is, we're at the gate. Barbarians at the gate has a very, we're storming. We're here. The day has come where private, and in this case, private capital, not private equity, and you will explain the difference there. Private equity is here.
We have no surprise. We've known this day we know it's coming. We've known it for a while. But yes, the upheaval in college football and college sports a little more broadly is reaching a fever pitch right now. We are on the verge of, we think it seems like a historic settlement in a few antitrust cases that is going to open the door for athletes to be paid significantly more of the billions of dollars that they help generate. And it's coming to a head in athletic departments that are scrambling to try to figure out their financing. Everybody knows that the cost of operating top tier college athletics is about to go up, and it's about to go up probably significantly. And some schools and some leagues feel pretty comfortable with their new media rights going up. I'm talking about the Big Ten and the SEC. about having more money. And other schools and other conferences feel nowhere near as confident. And college sports has always been, at least for the past 20 or 30 years, a massive commercial arms race, competing against one another for resources, for talent, for coaching, for players. That's not going to stop in whatever the next iteration of college sports is.
No better example of edifice complex than college sports.
100%. And the for better or worse, depending on how you view some of these private capital structures, we are, I think, on the precipice and probably by the end of the summer going to have the first number of deals between institutional capital of some sort and athletic departments or schools.
So at least in the story that you broke along with the Wall Street Journal today, Redbird Capital and Weatherford Capital have been talking to a number of these institutions.
Dozens, from what I understand.
Yeah, about injecting. And by the way, good kudos to you. You know, doing the reporting thing there. What is it? FOIA and find out. What was it that Jerry Cardinale, the Redbird founder, said about the opportunity to invest in college athletics? What was the line?
Yeah, he said it was one of the biggest opportunities in his 30 years of investing in sports.
That's saying something.
And I've heard
That is
that.
not Joe Schmo saying it. That is
I've heard
saying
that from
something.
a number of people. The college football is, you know this, Scott, the second biggest commercial sport in the U.S.
NFL and then
outside of the
college
NFL.
football. Yeah.
Certainly, from a viewership standpoint, it touches on. There's bigger fan affinity in college sports than there is in a lot of pro sports. Geographically, it's not only a wider net geographically, but it touches in parts of the country like Alabama, like Arkansas, that don't have pro teams anywhere near them. We see this in the Midwest as well, and in places like Iowa and places like in places like Kansas. There's a lot here that makes sense, and if you look at the drivers for valuation increase, rapid valuation increase in pro sports in the U.S., you see scarcity value. College sports has that. We're not minting new Power Five, or really not minting too many new Power Five schools. It has stable revenue, guaranteed contractual revenue moving forward, right? Largely in the same form, media rights. But if you're Georgia or you're Tennessee, your football ticket sales are a pretty stable income stream moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the non-correlated to other assets appeal. One of the things that has driven private equity to pro sports is that it's a very uncorrelated asset to pretty much any other industry that you might be in. And there's certainly worlds in which you can have a portfolio that spreads across technology and healthcare and, let's say, consumer goods, but there's correlation, there's overlap. If one goes down because of something, there's a chance others are going to go down. People, for at least in my conversations, investors look at sports as one of those areas that is largely uncorrelated from everything else, and that also makes it a really appealing investment place for
I remember when Guggenheim took heat for using insurance money for investing in the Dodgers, and you have pension plans. Ontario Teachers is a great example, widely scattered throughout sport. And you're wondering, well, is this really the kind of investment that this money should be utilized for? A pension plan? Well, yeah. It's if you want to see what's been relatively unaffected by whatever it be, geopolitics, tech, or disruption, you name it, sports has been a place where there's been consistent asset inflation. So yeah, this is a spot. This is a diversification of a portfolio where sports may be a part, and now it's just college sport, as you just said, particularly college football. It's like number two behind the NFL. That's not a bad place to be.
So you mentioned the Redbird Capital and Weatherford Capital coming together. They're raising money right now for an entity called Collegiate Athletic Solutions, CAS. It's the first, at least that I'm aware of, the first college sports specific fund that's out there. It's probably not going to be the last. And then we're obviously going to see some of these other big players. We know Sixth Street is talking to Florida State. We know Arctos Partners, probably the biggest in the sports private equity world, has also talked to Florida State a year plus ago. We're going to see a lot of the big names. We're going to see some small names as well. The structure for CAS, which we reported earlier today, and I think this is interesting. It's not traditional private equity, Scott. There's no hold co that they're taking an equity stake in. It's not really private credit either, because from their plan, as I understand it, it's not to take a guaranteed revenue cut in the future. So private credit, the way traditionally it's structured, as I understand it, you often do a deal where you give, let's just say you give $10 million, and then for each of the next 10 years, you're taking $1.2 million in guaranteed revenue, right? So you're getting your money back and then some, and it's contractually obligated. The way CAS is structuring this is they're looking to strike a deal in which they share in additional revenue that gets generated after their partnership. So it's not a contractually obligated, we're going to get this much back and this is the set amount of payments. It's getting your money back by taking a share of the incremental revenue growth. And I don't say that to mean that their share is not going to be bigger or just as big. I imagine there's going to be some very favorable terms given out in the college sports world to private equity and private capital in the same way we see it in other industries. So I don't mean to imply that in any way. But I do think the structure is a little bit, it's notable, and it's also, in my expectation, way more palatable for a public institution to sign
than just handing out fees
than it is to do something like the traditional private equity or private credit.
Yeah, especially the traditional private equity would say, I need X return in 3 to 5 years, and I want to get out.
Yeah.
So timelines and horizons matter here. So what are we looking at here? What, 5 to 10 schools? What, a max of what, $2 billion? Was that right?
The way CAS is approaching it, as I said, they're raising money. They're looking to do 5 to 10 deals at the start, anything from $50 to $200 million.
I can do
That's in
200 million
each.
times 10. That's like one of the easy math things I can do.
Top end of the range there, $2 billion. And again, they're not going to be the only ones. And it's going to be really interesting, Scott, to see who. They've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people have talked to a lot of people. Everybody's talking to everybody. When it comes time for these deals to actually start happening, who is doing it? The schools that seem the most obvious to me are the big schools, not in the big conferences.
ACC, baby.
Seems obvious.
Yes. Did I see, by the way, hold on, let me interrupt you. Did I see that they were
obvious.
looking at booting some of the members of the ACC, including like my mighty Syracuse?
The topic of kicking schools out has been kind of whispered about for a long time. Commissioners that I have talked to, even off the record, have been pretty adamant that they would never do that. I think what you're more likely to see than kicking someone out is you just reshuffle the share. So instead of, hey, Vanderbilt, you're getting the same share every year as Alabama, I think you go to Vanderbilt and maybe you say you're getting 60% of what Alabama gets.
I don't see how Super League doesn't happen.
In the league without kicking them out of the league necessarily.
And by the way, this could have been the first Nipsey Russell reference on the Sporticast. Right. I mean, you may be a little too young to get that.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have a better lead. It just popped in my head.
Russell, by the way.
Yeah, you know Nipsey Hussle. Like real people know Nipsey Russell. Go back and look at it. Go watch the movie Wildcats. Okay. And a lot of his stand-up specials, by the way. But I thought of a better lead. And this is the seminal moment for private equity in college edition of the Sporticast.
Okay, it only took you 11 minutes to come up with it.
Well, no. We've been recording for 11. I think it took me 8. I've been sitting on that for 3 minutes while you've been lecturing me about, and I quote, a lot of people are talking to a lot of people. There's your value add for the show, Novi Williams.
That's the context. Another thing I'll say on this, when Tim Pernetti was hired to be the new commissioner of the American Conference last month, unprompted in his talk about we're going to be proactive, we're going to be innovative. The things he's
private equity.
Yeah, he said we're going to flex our private equity relationships. The conference level private equity deal, I think, is a really interesting concept because it seems so much riskier than everything else. If I was a private equity fund and I was talking to Tim Pernetti, so the American, who's in the American in 5 years? Do you still have Memphis?
Who's in the American in 5 minutes?
That's what I'm saying.
I know.
If it were my money and I were trying to bank on investing in something that I had confidence was going to stay relevant.
The university is a better brand right now.
I feel way better that UNC is going to be relevant than I do the ACC, right? And I feel better that Memphis is going to be in a good spot than I do the American. So I know there are conferences talking to private capital. There's obviously a desire there to get money in. It would help you retain members or maybe even poach and bring new ones in. But the conference level private equity or private capital deals, I think are going to be and the conference level is actually honestly maybe an easier place to do equity, right? There's probably structural abilities to do something there that maybe a school itself wouldn't. But I do think it's that feels a little riskier to me.
Like what? Give me an example.
So the Pac-12 looked at this 10 years ago, right? Under Larry Scott, it was one of his original ideas. But a lot of the private equity deals we see in sports are you spin the commercial rights into this this commercial
NewCo,
entity,
yeah, the little NewCo,
yeah. And then you can sell an equity or even a revenue share piece out of that. Again, I think that's harder to do in public academia, harder for Florida State to do than maybe it would be for the ACC to do in some capacity. So that's my guess. But again, I also think that I would be more comfortable investing in a school or a series of schools that I felt good about staying relevant than I did a single. The Pac-12 didn't look like it was Power 2, but it looked pretty stable 5 years ago, right? And now it's 2 schools and might disappear entirely.
But remember when the conversation around the Pac-12 was, and I'm not just saying it because it was the commissioner's slant, but it was, hey, they've retained ownership of all the rights. They've aggregated the rights at a time when content and these rights are super valuable. And boy, they're poised for a score. Yep. Only they never pulled the trigger. Unlike Brett Yormark, who said, I'm going to come in and make a splash and I'm going to take the cash right away. They never pulled the trigger on a deal.
There were a few issues with that plan, and there's a lot of litigation we can do about it. But they had all their rights, as you said. They were setting themselves up for this TV deal that, in the end, came so
Never
late
came.
or was
Yeah.
so drawn out that it caused people to leave. But one of the things they failed to do in the middle, and this is part of what the private equity idea was bridge the gap. We know we have 4 or 5 years until our new media deal is up. In the meantime, we're falling behind year over year from our competitors. Try to bring in some money up front, bolster the next 5 years, keep us competitive, keep us relevant, keep us at the top tier.
And by the way, keep us, when we say keep us, we're talking UCLA and USC. Like they were saying, we cannot
Oregon,
compete
Washington,
with the big boys. Yeah.
Arizona, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a handful of schools in the Pac-12. I do wonder if they had figured out some system by which to get another $15 million a year into the hands of those schools for that 5 years running up to their media rights. If you end up with certainly a different Pac-12 or a way different financial reality Pac-12 than you have right now. But I think it was the failure to bridge the gap, and then it was obviously the inability to get a big media deal done in a timely manner that led to a lot of cold feet and then a mass exodus all in that 3-day span last summer.
Man, I wish today is a day I wish I could pick up the phone like I used to do and call Bobby Bowden. Remember the story I like to tell where, I was chatting with him one day and he's like, the president of the university showed up in my office on a Tuesday commenting on a few empty seats. And I knew my tenure as coach was over. Like the world had changed because, I'm the most important guy at Florida State. Why is the president coming into my office? That had never happened before. I would love to be able to hear his drawl, daggum it, telling me what is going on with private equity and what is that Drew Weatherford doing?
Happy. Drew has been on the front lines of it for more than a year now. And yeah, I think he's probably a pretty good person to sit in a board meeting and talk to an athletic director at another school and say, here's what we're thinking. Here's our vision. Here's how we can help you.
Right. Speaking of sitting in meetings and board meetings and discussing private equity, that is happening also at the NFL level this week in Nashville. The owners are getting together, and we're getting good indications there will be no quote unquote vote for any real should we accept private equity in the NFL. The other leagues have plans already. The NFL, as often is the case, because it can be slower, it can be more methodical, it can learn from the others, it can take a peek around at it can feel the wind, which way it's blowing. The NFL is taking its time in terms of any kind of private equity policy. From what we can gather, that they're on a path to approving this. Again, we don't believe there will be any vote. I mean, today is the last day of the meeting. It looks as if the plan, the framework with which they put together, which would be something around 10% that you can invest in a team, multiple teams. That'll be pushed down again for further examination a few months and maybe voted on sometime over the summer. You and I also understand that, frankly, this will happen pretty quickly. when this is approved, it won't take long for deals to get done. And something else you and I have found out is a little bit of the fee structure. Like the NFL will certainly exact its revenue out of this plan, and whether it's exit fees or whether it's upfront, this will be another way where the NFL adds to its industry-leading total revenue generation.
As you said, the NFL it was slower than all the other leagues and is going to do it in a way that it feels is more financially beneficial for the league as a whole. The NFL one is especially interesting to me because there's a handful of owners who don't care about this, will never do it. It doesn't matter. They're not interested. And then you have a whole other class of owners for whom the ability to take a couple percent, let's say 5% off the table, which could be $100 million easily, right? There's
some people, they can get back what they paid for the franchise and still control the team.
So yeah, there's going to be some owners for whom this change means nothing. There's going to be some owners for whom this change means a significant amount financially. We're going to see some deals very quickly. You and I agree. And yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the policy evolves. The way we understand this setting up is fairly similar to how the NBA structured things originally. They announced a partnership specifically with Dial for its home court fund to be the NBA's private equity partner. And it didn't take long. I don't have the timeline in front of me, but it was less than a year until the NBA kind of opened things up to everybody in some ways, right?
And by the way, in that, this is still one of the weird
Yeah.
stories. I don't know if we really examined it. Like Dial didn't do anything in that year. Like they
Struggled
had
to raise money.
they
There
had
were some leadership
significant head start
changes.
here and got nothing done.
And there was an acquisition in there. Blue Owl
Yeah.
took over. There was a lot going on, but yes, it felt like Dial Home Court was started the inning on second base and then didn't get to third base.
The home court advantage did not play out.
Yeah, the game's over. They've done a few deals now, but that's the expectation in the NFL is that pick a few specific preferred partners, maybe even, as you said, set up some kind of economics either on the back end, on the sale, on the fees, whatever it is, sweeten the pot a little bit for NFL owners, and then see how many teams are willing to do it. It also sounds like the numbers you gave, it's going to be smaller to start than the NBA. NBA, Major League Baseball, MLS, I think they all allow teams to sell up to 30% of their equity to funds. I would be shocked if we see that number anytime soon from the NFL. From what I understand, it's going to start closer to 10% total. So the NFL, like it does because it can, it's taking a slower approach. It's going to be more methodical. It's going to be more financially advantageous than it probably is for other leagues that are seeing similar interest and similar investment. And then we'll see where things go from there.
Well, you remember you were at the lunch where an NFL owner who shall remain nameless called us and said, "Hey, you guys do NFL valuations. We're really curious. We're coming to hang out for a while, and do you have time for lunch?" And there was a principal question that this owner and the executives around this person wanted answered and that they were examining. It was, what would the approval of private equity mean for franchise valuation in the NFL?
Yeah.
So that I mean, you could see where the mindset was. And this was, how long ago was that? A year and a half?
More,
2 years ago.
2
Yeah.
years,
So yeah, this has been going on at least in the brains of NFL owners for some time. But again, the luxury of being in the dominant position is you don't have to rush. I mean, it's nice to be able to sit back and wait and see what hiccups occur with the other sports. What do we learn? What do we glean? What can we do better? What can we borrow? So that's where the NFL is. And I got to tell you, Eben, if I was buying a ticket to sort of the front lines of private equity in sports right now, I could go to StubForge and get a good one right now. How about that for the best sponsor integration in the history of the Sporticast, first and only? And by the way, we're under no contractual obligation to do that. I just saw an opportunity.
Not at all. And we may be using them for events of ours coming up.
I think
as well. Yeah.
I am not just a spokesman. I'm a customer.
Real user.
Do you know the Hair Club for Men? Are you too young for that? And certainly everybody knows you don't need the Hair Club for Men, but are you familiar with that commercial?
No, I'm not. No.
All right. I'm not just the founder. I'm a client. Like you have to go look it up. Yeah. That's where I feel like when you look at a product, you're like, oh my, this is pretty cool. There are like myriad uses for this that I would actually use. And I suggested it to our events team that we should use some of these tickets and print some kind of cool codes on them for things that people can redeem. And they thought it was a good idea too.
Going back to the NFL for a second,
Go.
I know you and I have talked about this before. I'm kind of fascinated and have been for a while about, and I know the answer is largely ego, why NFL owners care that much about valuations if most of them are never going to sell and a number of them are not going to take money off the table.
Well, first of all, let me answer this. You don't have to sell, but simply a balloon valuation helps you to borrow money.
But does having an $8 billion asset versus a $9.5 billion asset change the ability to borrow that much?
Depends on what you're trying to borrow and for what.
Maybe, yeah. I just it to me, if you're never looking to sell, not even a small.
But who do you believe? Do you believe a single owner when they say I'm never selling? Do you believe a single owner that says I'm never selling?
I do, barring like catastrophic circumstances.
But that stuff happens. Yeah, that's why they care. It happens. You may have to dump.
If you told me Ryan Smith sells the Jazz anytime in the next 30 years, I'm going to assume something dramatic that is abnormal happened in some capacity, right?
Well, he fell in love with ice hockey so much that he wanted to devote all his time to hockey. That's what happened.
Hockey only.
Yeah.
So I do believe there are owners out there for whom the price is not the object, right? Matt Ishbia paid $4 billion for the Suns. He said it himself. The price was not the challenge, and getting out. I can't imagine him selling the Suns anytime soon either. The thing to me, once as valuations go up, it just
I would have said this about Mark Cuban.
the tax burden. Yeah, and maybe that's the perfect antidote, is that you never know until, someday your phone rings and it's what's going on in Dallas.
Or you're looking
selling.
ahead. You're looking ahead. You're reading tea leaves, an immediate landscape where, maybe this is the last huge deal for the NBA and you want to be out ahead of it. And you just say, you know what? I don't think, left of my own volition, I don't think I can compete at a top level. I'm not willing to put the resources into it where I can compete at that level. What I need is a partner that's well capitalized with a strategic synergy like real estate or sports betting or regular betting like Sands Corp that can come in and really infuse the franchise with the kind of capital it'll require to be a championship team.
Yeah.
That was pretty good by me.
Very good.
Thank you.
I was going to say, and then you said it yourself.
Thank you.
Before I got there.
When I screw up, I say it. When I do well, but yeah, that was pretty good.
Let's close out the show real quick. Angel Reese.
We're switching we're doing that topic. Okay.
Other rookie sensation.
Nobody needs private equity. You just need an angel investor. Exactly. That would have been the transition, Eben. Oh my God, that was so good. And I just can't. Come on, Novi Williams.
We'll just edit it back in.
Come on.
Angel Reese just paid in cash 5% of.
She paid in cash?
We know she paid in cash.
Oh, all right.
Did you read the Sportico story, Scott?
I was a little busy.
Shout out to Dylan. Paid in cash 5% of the new USL team in DC.
She's from Baltimore.
From Baltimore. Athlete investors happen all the time. We've reached the point now where, rookies in the WNBA.
Newbies are recognizing the value of equity in sports. Yeah.
And I don't think it's crazy to say that this is probably NIL money. Angel was a star in college basketball right at the right time, especially for women's college basketball stars to be making a lot of money off the court while still in college when she was at Maryland and at LSU. A week into her WNBA, her pro career, and this is not a team that's worth a lot of money, I don't think, but putting down cash to buy 5% of a USL franchise. This is NIL money at work, and one of the more interesting, at least in my experience, one of the more interesting uses of it, at least that we've seen so far.
It wouldn't have been so long ago where you on this very program would have uttered the words, that NWSL team is not worth much money either.
That's right. Yeah. So who knows if this turns into if this is $100 million
this is Angel City,
in 2 years.
Wouldn't it make more sense?
Really
Wait, no, I just stumbled upon that.
What?
Shouldn't they have brought her into Angel City? I know there's a process going on right now where there's a majority stake, but Angel has to be an Angel City investor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the you should not buy 5% of Angel City, that's for sure.
No,
but there's some good synergies there.
Soshnick was good today. That's all I'm saying. I noticed you were you're harried, you're rushed. You've got a meeting outside the office. You got a lot on your mind today. You had the big story this morning. But I'm just going to say, you were fine. Only I would notice that I think you were a tad distracted.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair. But some days you lean on me, some days I lean on you. That's
many days, my friend. Many days.
All right, he is Scott Soshnick. You can find him on Twitter at Soshnick. I am Eben Novi Williams. You can find me on Twitter at Novi_.
I'm not going to bother you today because you're not at your 100%.
Show is produced by Aaron Greenewald. Thank you very much to Aaron. Sportico's digital media editor Cora Veltman would like you to know that you can follow the show at Sporticast, which is the hub of the Sportico Media Network.